Which move? Good golly.
You've moved a lot the last.
I have moved. I've been a mover. I'm a furniture mover. You didn't know that?
Where was you? Let's see, you were down at Alan Jones.
No. I started off at 95 First Street, where Haskell Interiors is. Then I moved across the street to 80 Church Street, and from 80 Church Street to 92 Oak Street, from 92 Oak Street to 221st Street, from 221st Street to 92 Oak Street, from 92 Oak Street to 120 North Ocoee. Is that to confuse you?
Is one location been better than the other?
Yes, 95 First Street.
Is that was your first one?
Mm-hmm. That's where historically the building was.
Do you think that's where the magic began?
Well, let's just say that's where the institution began. That was organization. Johnny Hardwick was there, and before Johnny even, the Hardwick Woolen Mills was there. So it's been there for the long.
Did they do the actual making the clothes there, or were
Oh,
they
no,
just
no,
sell-
it's a retail. It's been a family retail.
Just retail.
Retail.
Never manufactured.
Never in those buildings.
Was the family business? Did they make clothes?
Well, Hardwick store used to be a division of Hardwick Woolen Mills. And in 1965, Johnny Hardwick, who was then the treasurer, became the president of Hardwick Store, Inc. And he ran the store in that location from 1965 to approximately 1984 when he died, I believe 84. And then his widow survived, and she closed it in 87. And I felt so bad about it. I said, I'll take it over.
Why did you feel bad?
It's been here for
Are you connected to that family lineage?
Yeah.
What's
I've
the
been connected. I've been the landlord for, let's think here.
So how are you?
40. I was their landlord for 40 years.
For some reason, I always thought you were connected to the Hardwick, like related to.
Yes, I am.
What's the relation connection?
I'm a grandson.
You're the grandson of who?
George L., who was the son of C.L.
And C.L. started Hardwick Woolen Mill?
I say grandson. I'm the great-great-grandson of C.L. Hardwick.
You are the great-great-grandson of C.L. Hardwick.
That's correct.
What was his time frame?
Ooh, you got me, hadn't you?
Like when was his?
I think he was 1830-ish until 1880-ish, I believe.
How did he get in the?
Or maybe 19, when did he die? He might have gotten up to 19, well, let's see. I think he got up to 1905, maybe.
What was his, how did he get in that business?
He was a merchant.
Because textiles was big around here then.
No, he was a merchant, and he was pots and pans and cloth and foodstuffs in downtown Cleveland.
Where was he from originally?
His parents were from Charleston, Tennessee. They were Indian agents.
They weren't. Now they were no Indian blood in them. They were just Indian agents.
And then his father went west and was killed out in Arkansas, and his wife came back and raised young C.L., and C.L. got into businesses and started.
So he was sold pots and pans?
Mercantile, old mercantile store. I don't know if he sold tobacco or whatever, but
so he had his own store.
Yeah, Hardwick and Tibbs. And then they ran it up until near 1860, and Tibbs went to Dalton, and Hardwick stayed here, and then the war comes, and he basically had to depart. He'd be a rebel.
C.L. Hardwick. So he
He'd
fought,
be a rebel.
So he fought with the Union?
No, he's a rebel.
Oh.
He's a rebel.
Oh.
Yeah, that family were rebels. They're Confederate sympathizers.
Oh.
So we were the town was occupied by the Union forces, and then he left.
Where'd he go?
I think he went to a farm somewhere. I hadn't found the farm, but he went out somewhere.
Did he come back?
Oh yeah, he came back to town. And then he got in.
When they had to leave, so the Union came in and occupied the whole. That's when Sherman burnt the courthouse. Is that right?
Well, I don't want to say he did, but let's say that the courthouse was burned. I don't have the facts.
So during that period, when they came back, did they still own the property they owned then?
Oh yeah. Well, I don't know if he owned it. I don't know if he leased it or owned it. So I haven't.
That would have to disrupt everything.
The town was disrupted. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, bank loans and property taxes and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
It was a tough part of life.
That they had to get everything together. So after he got, when did he start but he was already doing the Hardwick store then, the Hardwick clothing.
Well, no. Then basically, I think we would just say he was connected and he was an entrepreneur. And he was fortunately connected to a banker, and that was, I think, one of the Mayfields. And he was connected to the fellow that had the copper mines, and that was a Rott.
That was Rott.
Rott family from
How powerful was Rott during that period?
Rott was an industrialist, and he was wealthy. And then Craig Miles was here in town, and he was a part of that group. And then there were livery stables, so CL got involved with wagon wheels and started doing some other things. He was an entrepreneur. He got into a number of things. Then he started a spoke factory, I believe, down in Dalton or in Georgia.
Making wagon spokes?
Wagon wheels. And then he, with some others, got together and said, we're going to start it. So they made pots and pans, or what we called ironworks, or ironware. And he went together with some people and they started a foundry, which later became, or what did become, Hardwick Stove. And then he didn't have enough to do, and he had another son, so he said, okay, let's start a woolen mill. And right next door to the foundry, a woolen mill was created.
I think my great-grandfather built the woolen mill.
Well,
Slaughterer.
Well, he could. In fact, he did. So I believe it started off as Cleveland. You're testing my history. I didn't read that today, but Cleveland Woolen Mill then became Hardwick Woolen Mill in the early 1900s. And so there was a group of those guys. I don't call them guys. Let's call them capitalists. And they went out and they built the town.
Literally built the town.
They built this town.
Before electricity was even here.
They got involved with the Tennessee Power, and they got involved with others to make the town happen. Telephone, utilities.
You ever wondered why it was Cleveland? Why it was
Cleveland?
Exactly where it's at? Why wasn't it 2 miles up the road? Or I guess that's cause Taylor Spring, right?
Well, well, now we're getting into history that I wish I had read more.
We're just guessing anyway.
Well, no, but you had a community here, and the community was around formation, a government formation. And then the second thing is you had to get copper some way to commerce or to industry, and the rail lines were key to that. So it was a mule train from Copper Hill to Cleveland, Tennessee.
My understanding is that Rott played a big part in getting the railroad to stop in Cleveland.
I can't tell you that, but I think he was influential. You know, he's buried here.
Yeah, I have never been to his grave.
Yeah,
it's
in the north end of Fort Hill Cemetery. In fact, he has grandchildren in Chattanooga.
Let me ask you this, and I want you to be honest. What does the V stand for?
Vincent.
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 Who is Vincent? Joe Vincent.
Joseph Vincent.
Joseph Vincent.
The Joseph Vincent was my father's name, and Joseph Vincent was my grandfather's name. And you'll have to go back to Wales and figure out, and I haven't checked it, where Vincent came from a Welsh family. So,
I wonder how they got here from Welsh.
From Wales?
Wales.
They migrated into North Carolina, Virginia area. and they took a liking to things, and then they moved west. He was Joseph Vincent was a son of a Cumberland Presbyterian minister. So then you will see, towns or communities being built up. And so one of the things that occurred, there were circuit riders, and then there were ministers that came in. And then the next thing that always occurs is that you'll need education. So he started an educational institution over there in Sparta.
So it was Joseph Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
And now he didn't do the migration. It was.
Oh, his father was James Tate Williams.
And his father was.
I can't tell you. I know, but I can't tell you.
So C.L. Hardwick.
C.L. Hardwick is a different family lineage.
Mm.
That's my mother's side of the family.
Oh.
James Tate is on my dad's side, the Williams side. The Williams married the Hardwick, or actually the Moore, who was a Hardwick. So there's two lines.
And then there's the Callaways that are connected to the Moores, right?
The Callaways connected the Moores.
Didn't.
I don't connect the Callaways and Moores, but maybe they did. The Moore family, that my ancestors are from Upper East Tennessee. They were up in Jefferson County, in that area. Well, actually, the lake is now. So
Now, how does the Louisville Land Company? How does that?
How's that figure out?
Every deed you look at, if you go back far enough, it'll say Louisville Land Company.
Right. Interesting history. Again, the entrepreneurs got together, and obviously they wanted to see the town grow. CL's son was involved with the creation with Craig Mile and some others, some bankers, and said, guess what? If we're going to grow this town, what are we going to have? We're going to have decent housing, and we're going to have industrial sites, and we're going to have schools and infrastructure.
No different than today, as far as...
Except it was not citywide, it was regional. So they started where their focus point was where the mill and the foundry were. And if you want to think in terms of, I just use 3rd Street, the old Lee Highway, and you go south from there, that's where they were developed. And they went from Fort Hill all the way over to, they may have gone all the way over to the Ridge. I think they did.
So with the Louisville Land Company, that they were just a group of investors.
They were a company, development company. And they went out and they said we have to have housing, so they went out and subdivided the land. And I don't think they built the houses. Now they may have, but at that same time, back to industry, there was a need for a lumber mill, and there was a need for a brick factory, and et cetera, and you'll start to kind of piece together, there was a need, there was a need, there was a need, there was a need, and they kind of like building a pyramid. They started off with jobs, and then they put more infrastructure, and then before long they had a community. They had housing, they had education, they had water systems, they had brick mill, they had a brick factory, and then after that they started making furniture here.
Why do they call it Louisville? Was it somebody from Louisville?
Don't know the origination. Louisville was in Kentucky, and Louisville was in Tennessee. And there are two, and I haven't pursued each one, but there may be a connection with Louisville, Tennessee in raw materials or some process that was originated in Louisville and came here. At one time I thought there was a sheep farm up there, but I can't confirm that.
So your relatives were just a member of this investment group?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So
he's one of them.
So along the lines, you acquired quite a bit of real estate in this process.
No. Mm-mm. Louisville Land Well, that's another story. But Louisville Land actually was set up to liquidate. That's the best way I can say it. It was not set. They could have continued because, but it was set up to liquidate. They were a liquidating company. So everything they sold, they distributed to the stockholders or to the partners at the time, stockholders, and then they didn't buy anything else. So it was just, it's kind of like a subdivision. They created a subdivision and they liquidated the lots. Interestingly enough, comes another story. As time went by, our cemetery, Fort Hill, was begun about 1830-ish. And in 1905, they were finding that there was not enough space. And so they said, what in the world are we going to do? And they said, well, this guy has a farm, and it's adjacent to the cemetery. Why don't we buy the farm? And they used the same concept. They went out and got a subdivider, or an architect, or engineer, and they divided up the lots, and they started selling the lots. And they
Louisville Land Company.
Right, and they were liquidating the lots. So after all of the property over here was sold, I don't think there's any remaining. Then what was remaining are unsold cemetery lots. So that's the history of Louisville Land.
And that was it.
Well, then I come along.
What's your connection?
Well, I come
Other
along.
than your...
I come along. I said, there's no way that you can manage a cemetery if you're in the liquidation business. There's no way you can manage.
They don't go together.
They don't operate together. So I said, we got to come up with a way. So I came up and I started dreaming, and I said, okay, I know a number of ways that you can do it. You can go out and invest in property that is cash flowing property, and take that cash flowing property, and then you take those monies and you put into the company. And that way the roads and the upkeep, because it wasn't making any money. Well, then the company really, it almost went bankrupt. And I would go back to this. When I got involved, it was on its backside. It wasn't going to make it. I mean, it could have been liquidated, given it to somebody. And somewhat times I volunteered for the worst jobs, but I got involved and said, okay, I'll take it over, and the rest is history.
Why did you want to get involved?
Well, I'm a little crazy. That's the best way I can say. George L. is buried up there. The Reimers are buried up there. All the people that I grew up with are buried up there. So it was kind of like, okay, who's going to do it? It's kind of like the last straw. I drew the last straw. Nobody else drew a straw, so I drew the straw.
Same reason you got into the Hardwick clothes business.
No. Well, I mean, a Hardwick store. Not
Hardwick
clothes.
store.
No, I volunteered to go into Hardwick clothes.
Because you hated
I applied for a job.
because you hated to see it go out of business.
No. We got the different company. Hardwick Clothes was the son or the descendant, if you would, of Hardwick Woolen Mill. That was my first job up here.
But now, after you volunteered to take over the cemetery, you sort of raised your hand, and all of a sudden you're it. Tag, you're it.
I was tagged, and every lawyer in town came after me.
Because you raised your hand.
I raised my
There was
hand.
no monetary gain for you.
Oh, there's never a monetary gain there.
It's just what's the difference between that cemetery and all these other cemeteries out here that's
Nobody's
watching?
It's.
I mean, if they weren't next to a church, nobody'd mow them.
Well, I'm not going to say, but let me just. I'm a dreamer. I've got little dreams to see things work better, and so I'm always working on a different dream. I haven't been able to implement that dream yet, but I'm always looking for things. And, I don't think a pet cemetery would work, but you never know. At one time, I thought I put a microwave tower up there, or I could put a windmill up there, or I could put photocells up there, generate utility. Or
What's it for? Just to mow?
Well, no. If you generate income, then can perpetuate the inventory, the cemetery, and keep it up better.
Just mowing.
Income.
Just mowing it.
Well, no, it's more than mowing. It's roads, mowing, curbs, fill in, monument resurrection, a lot of things going up there.
A maintenance nightmare.
Cutting trees, cutting limbs. Well, not a nightmare. Let's call it. It's an activity.
How big is Fort Hill?
About 26 acres.
How many graves?
19,000.
19,000. Golly.
Do you sleep at night?
Yeah. 19,000. I would have no idea. And it's full.
No, it's got about 10,000 to go. Man.
So it'd be like 30,000 people there.
Well, it could be.
You know, in the future, we're going to have to do something with cemeteries, or everything will be a cemetery.
Well, it's got land to expand to, and I've thought about it. I mean, I haven't. At one time, I was going the veterans route, and then we create a veterans annex to the north. There's a possibility, and there's not to say planting a seed, but there's a possibility of taking the veterans and moving it south all the way to Smith Drive. Mm-hmm. And I've got that in the back of my mind. Mm-hmm. And that would be a nice activity. Now I've got to see how we're going to fund that, but that was an activity I had. But there's enough room in the north to expand the veterans without involving me.
What's your first memory?
First memory of where?
Of anything. Just your first memory.
Probably Falmouth and Lexington, Chattanooga, Tennessee. Living in a house down there. Second floor.
How did your family get there?
Dad was a lawyer and an entrepreneur. I was a third child of his family, or the family, and they looked for a house and ended up there. So, very nice house on a corner lot. And he was used to having animals, and he was used to having space. And so he said, we're going to plant ourselves right here. So my formative years were right there on that corner. We just had a whale of a good time. Had 2 older sisters.
Was it like a Norman Rockwell painting?
It could have been, but we were just, it was unbelievable. We had a city farm there. I mean, we had donkeys and goats and chicken, and our neighbors had roosters, and we had rabbits, and we just, finally the city caught up with us.
City always has a way of catching up with y'all.
They kept saying the note over the edge, and they said, gosh. And our neighbors had horses, so we didn't have, no, we never had a horse there.
Now,
we had a donkey wagon, though.
The rumor is you got a high education.
The rumor.
Mm-hmm. Is it true?
Well, I believe in lifetime learning. And so...
Formal education.
Formal, yeah. I have 2 masters and working maybe towards a doctorate.
Where did you get your master's?
At Emory, and a group out in Chicago called Realtor University.
Where'd you go to college?
Went to Vanderbilt, National.
Go to Chattanooga schools and high school?
Did. I was very fortunate. Went to a little school on Lookout Mountain, and then I went to Baylor. Graduated from Baylor back in '65.
You know, on Leave It to Beaver Ward, did you know he went to Baylor?
I didn't know that, but that's interesting.
That's it. I saw that on Wikipedia. If it's true, I assume.
And what is his name?
Can't remember.
I'll have to check it out.
But he went to Baylor High School.
Well, Leave It to Beaver, he would have been older than I am.
Yeah, I think he graduated maybe
in the 50s. See, Beaver.
Maybe 48 or 38.
Maybe, yeah. He's an older chap.
He would have had to have been 50 in the show, right?
No, wait a minute. The father or the son?
The father.
Oh, well, Leave It to Beaver's father. Oh, yeah.
Ward.
Oh, yeah.
He's the one that went to Baylor.
Oh, he's 48-ish. Because, see, I visited.
He looked older then.
They may have, but I was I watched it in the early '60s, and that would have put him 28 or 30, I guess. I don't know.
I'm older than 48. I don't look as old as he did.
Yeah, but it's interesting.
It is.
And I'll have to check that out.
With all the education, how did you end up selling clothes? Well, first, did they...
Reframe the question. Why did you end up in the clothing business? Is that the question?
Well, I stopped by the other day and I bought this
I know.
shirt. I like them.
Yeah.
They're wide.
Okay.
They got a nice wide.
Okay.
Is this
Well-
real? Is this real cotton?
Yeah, that's Pima cotton. Well,
It's thick. I like
okay,
it thick.
okay. Well, let's go back to that history. And of course, you'll probably appreciate this. Johnny Hardwick, if you knew Johnny, he was quite a guy. Johnny went to Vanderbilt. Johnny was a member of the family. He was a grandson of CL. But Johnny ran the clothing store. And so as children, we used to come up to the clothing store, and that's where we bought our clothing.
From Chattanooga.
Yeah, and we basically, mother bought hers in the women's department, dad bought his in the men's department, and then Johnny, interesting enough, sold Boy Scout and Cub Scout uniforms. And so that's where I bought my Cub Scout and my Boy Scout uniforms. So from that formative years, coming into that clothing store, got to know the clothing business, etc. And then in '67, I came up, it was a summer, I was at Vanderbilt and I needed a summer job, and I came up and worked in the mill down at the Hardwick Clothes, and worked in the shipping department, swept the floors and did things with them. And then came back in '60.
Where'd you go in the meantime? Is it back to school?
Back to school. That's summer work. And then I think I came back in '68. I did. I came back and did it in '68. Did the same thing. Worked in the computer department and did things and programming, etc. And then from there, in '69, of course, I got shipped off to the Army. I went over to Fort Bliss, Texas, and served 2 years there. Just an amazing job. Just a job that I think back on. I said, how in the world did I end up there?
Did you get drafted?
No, I was ROTC. I volunteered.
Was there a war going on then?
Vietnam.
Did you see any action?
I didn't. They didn't invite me. I had too many solutions. In fact, they caught wind of my solutions.
What did you do while you was there?
Huh?
What did you do while you was
While I
there?
was in El Paso,
Yeah.
I was they trained me to be a missileman, so low altitude and high altitude missiles. So then I started developing thoughts and ideas, and then I became a general's aide. And my whole job there for 2 years was to make sure that VIPs that came to El Paso, military, diplomats, foreign dignitaries, were well treated and protected. I was kind of like a bodyguard, if you will. Mm-hmm. I didn't carry a gun. I just was a big target. Mm-hmm. But I took care of people that came, serviced their needs, and then spent 2 years there. And then after that, took a trip to, I guess I worked. I went back to work. Then I came back up here and worked, and then took off to Emory, then came back up here and worked again. Went to Europe after graduation.
What for?
Europe?
Yeah.
See the world. Never been to Europe.
No other reason?
See the world. Experience. Had a friend that went to Emory with me. He's a Vietnam veteran. And he said, why don't we take off? I said, well, I'd never thought about it, but let's do it. And so we hit about 13 countries. And we had a Eurail pass.
How long were you gone?
Long time. 2
Year?
months? No, 2 months, just the summer. June to, I had to get back to work.
At the store?
At the mill. So my first job was working down for D.S. Stewart. He was the president of Hardwick's. And my job was to be his assistant. And he taught me the business. And from there, I basically got into manufacturing and got into production, got into finance, got into collections. Then I got into inventory, a lot of inventory,
I bet.
a lot of payroll, a lot of sales.
Was that place rolling at that time?
It was in fair shape in 73. The economy was a little tight, but thank goodness that group had the forethought to find some money, and they got a bond issue from the industrial revenue, and they went out and built a plant out on Old Hassel Road. And so my first big job was I was the project manager to build that plant, a 180,000 square foot plant out there on Old Hassel.
In 73, 74?
73, 74. I think we moved in 75. But then once I built it, I had to move the plant. And so I practiced logistics planning with a bunch of other guys. And we had a Red Ball Express, and we actually ran the plant and moved the machines and people at the same time.
Well, I bet that was complicated.
Yeah, it was fun. It was.
What did they need a new plant at that time?
Oh, for sure. It was a multi-story plant. The efficiency, American Uniform had cooling at the time, and so it was a dated plant. And it was a functional plant, but it had elevators, and it, up and down, up and down. But if you're going to be state of the art, you're going to have to bring in new equipment and satisfactory working conditions.
Why did they want to have multi-levels at that time?
No, wait a minute. That was when the mill was built.
Yeah.
That was a woolen mill.
Yeah.
So they were able to do that as a woolen mill. And then the woolen mill begat the sewing end of the company, where that made the trousers and made the top coats and suit coats. And
They actually bring the cotton in and...
No, what, the wool back then. And they dyed it. But that was closed down in about 65. 65, the woolen mill was sold to John L. Hutchison out of Chattanooga, who was an industrialist down there with Peerless Woolen Mill. And he bought the company, and didn't buy the company, bought the equipment, and then ran it there in the company, in the building for a while. And then went out to Peerless Road, where he built the Peerless Woolen Mill, who then begat, and it became Burlington, and then Burlington became
M&M Mars.
M&M Mars. So that's it. Cleveland has been blessed with these companies that have been able to start something else, begin something else, begin.
Is that by accident or design or just our good luck or?
I think there's an entrepreneurial spirit. I think there's I think there's a work ethic. I think there's a vision. People are visionary in that generation. Now, today we've got a lot of. I'm not sure we're starting as many companies today as they were starting companies then.
It's probably harder to start a company today with all the rules.
It is. You have to do more planning. There's an element of planning. I'm working with some industrialists that are trying to start up industry or start up manufacturing that was once offshore, and it takes time. You have to put together a lot of plans, a lot of what ifs, but and there is some magic formula. So if you would, there's some secret potion that you have to use in order to make a successful company. But at the same time, you start somewhere. It's much like anything else, any entrepreneurial event. You have to start with a dream, you have to try a vision, and then you go and you start building on it and see if it can exist. But you got to have the people. Now you have to go back then, and we're struggling right now with employment, but back then there were there was I won't say a surplus, but there was an adequate supply of employment for employment. We could fuel the engine with employees in the area. But right now, you probably see, it's kind of difficult to find employees.
Now you're talking about in the 70s.
In the 70s, when we built the company, and the economies.
After you built
The company, I will say, the economies of scale were remarkable. We were able to improve our production flow. Our costs went down.
when you moved in 74.
Sure did. Our costs came down. Our engineering improved. Our time study improved. We built some accounts, some remarkable accounts. We brought in computers, so that got us not only inventory but order processing efficiencies. We brought in call center type of a process, and the banks supported us. We were very lucky, and the banks, the local banks, supported our events, and we went out and we built a company. Went from, in the early 70s, about 6 million, and when I left in 96, we were about 32 million. So we had a nice run.
How come you left?
A family disagreement. Either I was too old or too ornery. Yeah.
How'd you feel leaving?
Well, I didn't think my mission was over, but they did. I was going forward. I will say, and I'm not trying to say anything about strategy, I did have a different strategy. I didn't think that the company could survive with one plant in Cleveland, Tennessee, without looking for additional sourcing, without looking for sourcing at a lower cost, looking for different products that we could possibly introduce to the product mix that we can stabilize in case of a bad economy. And the board didn't feel that they wanted to do that. But I looked around, I was talking to people and looking at people that wanted to sell their plants or, do something different. But, to me, and of course I guess I was raised in the company, but the whole thing is economies of scale. If you don't crank out, and I don't want to say crank out, if you don't produce so many units a week, and you've got fixed income or fixed overhead, and then you've got some variables in there, and then you've got escalation and inflation, if you don't crank out that and not regularly crank it out, and then not see that increase, it'll catch up with you. And indeed, that's what happened.
If you don't deal with the economies of scale, somebody else will, right?
Somebody will come in, and what transpired, and I regret to say this, but what transpired is that our competition, and I watched them, and I tried to tell the board they were out there, went down to China, and they went down to Caribbean, and they went down to Mexico, and they went anywhere and everywhere to find products of equal quality at less cost. And they were maintaining their profitability by shipping in that product and mixing it with domestically made product, and they were able to keep up. Well, they did that, and much to the loss at the mill, basically they did it so well that our market share between 1996, 1997 to when it sold in 2014, it just went down.
Do most businesses have to change with the times, do you think?
Every day. Every day.
I had a good friend of mine that's a good businessman. He said you have to monitor and adjust every hour.
If not well, I can't do that quite like that, but,
But
it's much like I will tell you, it's like the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
If you are a day trader,
Yeah.
it's every minute. You're right. Every minute is a different event, and what you have to do is be there witness it or be aware of it, have market intelligence, have feelers, and be available to take advantage or to correct based upon the circumstance.
Now say the Tibbs guy you said that went and made wagon wheels.
No, he was a partner
He was
with
a-
Hardwick,
Yeah.
with CL.
So if
He
they were
went to Dalton, and he was a partner, but he may have gone down. I haven't checked the family, but he did go to Dalton area, and he may have started his own shop down there.
but it's not a viable business anymore, obviously.
I don't know
It's
that.
like selling buggy whips.
No. Okay. Hardwick's wagon wheel business obviously migrated. I mean, they sold wagon wheels, and then they probably they didn't have a connection with any large wagon manufacturer or any spoke tires for the automobile. So it went out. But he was smart enough, and this goes back to his genius. He was smart enough to build a bank. He became a banker, and that was a smart move. And I'm going to say that he was so ingenious. He went out and had about 6 sons, and he said, "Boys, we're going to go to work." And he put a son in each of his locations. And so they were out there working. Sometimes they worked together, but sometimes they worked separately in all of his operations.
But you can have a business that does real well, and you do real well in it, and the times can change.
Quickly.
All of a sudden, it doesn't work anymore.
Quickly. Oh, do I know that? Or you lose your top leader. Either death or sickness, or he is hired away. It's amazing what happens. We were so lucky at Hardwick Clothes. We didn't lose people. To me, that was something that I pride on my tour. We didn't lose people. Once we had them, we didn't handcuff them, but once we had them on the team, well, I have one exception. He was overlooked for promotion, but we typically didn't lose people. But sometimes they would go to American Uniform and work for a while, and then they'd come back. But on the most part, we didn't lose many people.
But a business that pours millions of dollars into something, hoping that people are still going to want it,
Yeah.
is risky, isn't it? Unless you're forward thinking.
Well, every business I've been in from the beginning has been a risk. And it's kind of, if you're in that mindset, then you're lucky. I feel very fortunate. I mean, I've been in the military walking beside missile systems, and that's just, you never know. And of course, I've been dealing with law enforcement. I've been dealing with all these activities all through my life, climbing off cliffs, jumping out of towers, whatever, and there's a big risk. But you get prepared for it, you train for it, and you get yourself aware of the shortfalls that you may have personally in dealing with that risk. And you got to make sure that you're prepared for them.
Why even take the risk, though?
Um,
Is there any reward anymore for?
It's kind of, I've thought so much about that. If you're in the service business, you're really not taking a risk, you're just serving. You're just serving. It's another service medium that you're providing.
So say you're in the radiator repair business. 50
I
years
used
ago.
to do things like that. Yeah, go ahead.
I
did.
Oh,
yeah.
did you do that? Sure enough. I was just naming something
It was
that.
my buddy. The one down here on 3rd Street, the one in Chattanooga. Yeah, he was. So,
But I mean,
I'd carry him in there, and that was, I hate to tell you, I was around all that stuff, and it was very risky what they were doing.
But I mean,
cleaning out radiators.
But I mean, anymore, they don't even do that anymore. They just put a new one in.
No, they just.
So it's a business.
They toss it. Back then, it was a clean out, fix the fins, and
would they have
weld it back, etc.
Would they have had any idea then that the future would be disposable radiators?
Well,
I mean, how many businesses today in 10 years people won't even
Well,
want it?
I would say that, but I don't want to say but I would just offer one thought is that the rules, the EPA rules, and the restrictions on acid and repair of radiators made some of those businesses obsolete. You just can't deal with it. You're in a hazardous area, and people just realize that, hey, we can't meet the requirements, we can't discharge all this mess. In fact, we got into that once before when we started talking about dyes. And anytime you're dyeing, you have a dyeing operation. Anytime you have a plating operation, anytime you've got where you're discharging chemicals into the system. And sometimes it just mandates the elimination of repair. So it becomes a recycling process rather than a repair process. So you recycle clothing, or I went down and bought some socks the other day. I thought, well, they're expensive. Looked on the label and it says made from recycled yarn. Mm-hmm. I thought, oh, well, this is interesting. And then you go and I pick up file folders and it says made from recycled paper, and then you pick up something else made from something else that's been recycled. And the only thing that I don't like to do is buy recycled tires for some reason. I just feel very uncomfortable with recycled tires.
Or the retreaded ones.
Well, that's recycled.
Yeah.
Because I've seen what happens to those. I'm driving on one right now.
You know,
and they just come apart. In fact, I see them on the highway.
Any business now needs, if you're a very big business, you almost have to have somebody sitting in a room thinking about what if.
That's it. That's what can we do next?
What could
what's
happen?
our next step?
What could happen next?
Yeah. Or why not? And that's part of the creative genius of this country. We get into that.
Do you think
Who would have thought back in 1969? I'll test you a little bit. Who would have thought that the process was to shoot down airplanes? Okay? Who would have thought that same process we started thinking about shooting down missiles? It's the same concept. So we basically low altitude missiles. And who would have thought? I mean, that's the same type of thought. I know we're thinking with the Minuteman and the ICBM back then, but we're talking about low altitude missile systems.
So somewhere somebody was saying, hey, if we can shoot down this plane, why don't we shoot down this rocket?
That's right.
And somebody said, well, you're crazy.
Well, we were out there, I was working on those. We were developing that system, and now 10 years later we have it. So not 10, in 5 years it was developed. And now they're used over there in the Middle East. So it's the same type of concept.
The wild thinker is very valuable, isn't he?
Indispensable. The designer, the guy that does research and development, the fellow that is actually out there thinking of a program or a need, an unfilled expectation, invaluable. And so often, and I'm not saying they're discarded because of their mechanism or their mannerisms, but so often we overlook those geniuses. And they're out
because they're not actually making something or bringing money in.
Nobody can sense it. Nobody can sense it. You just don't have a feel for what this guy or gal is capable of. And that happened to me. It still happens to me. I had an interview before I came over here today, and same concept. How can we take human capital and magnify them, and yet then empower them? And that's what maybe I enjoy doing, is finding that human capital that you can empower, make them into something that they're not. And that's what we did. We had a great thing going at Hardwick Clothes. Hardwick store has been a little bit more difficult.
Describe the day you left Hardwick
Clothes? Kind of interesting. I've packed up my materials, kind of like the old stories where you pack up your materials in your car in your cardboard box, and took it down to an office, upstairs office in downtown Cleveland, and became a real estate manager. And then from there, I got a license. Real estate manager.
Did you own the real estate?
Yeah, at that time, I had a couple properties, and then took it from there.
Like 10 or 5?
Oh, it could be 10. But then took it from there and said,
50?
Hey, it could have been whatever. But they took it from there and became a agent in Chattanooga. So I left in.
So you managed that property yourself?
Yeah.
What was the name of that?
Louisville Land. I just went down there and became full-time at the cemetery. But then I went to Chattanooga and started working with a developer down there as an agent, and left there and became another agent, and then left there and started the Century 21 franchise in Chattanooga, and then left there and became Williams & Williams. And now I have a real estate brokerage shop in Chattanooga.
Y'all do pretty well?
We stir things up. We're not doing great, but we stir things up. My problem is I'm an absentee realtor.
Do you have agents there?
I used to. I don't. I'm only one now.
Do you have a storefront there?
Yeah, it's in the Franklin Building in Eastgate. But pandemic. Of course, I stayed open up here. I guess I was supposed to, but the mayor in Chattanooga didn't want anybody to be open, so I didn't go to Chattanooga. I operated up here and tried to do everything internet based up here, and it worked. I was able to run a internet-based real estate operation from Cleveland.
Did you sell some stuff?
Sure did. Yeah, oh yeah. But then got back into it as things loosened up, and we were able to show property. And I'd come and go out of Chattanooga. They'd know what I was doing. What was it? I think we were supposed to be indispensable. Was that? I used to think.
What do they call that?
I think they gave it a terminology, but
what do they call that, Gwen? What do they call that? Indispensable? No, I said, what was that?
No.
I know the name of it.
I know you do, but they were supposed to keep me off.
Non-essential.
Non-essential. I was supposed to be essential.
And essential, yeah.
God.
So
what they say?
What?
You got to run a cemetery. You got to be essential if you're essential.
Oh, that's right.
But then I was a property manager down there, and you got to keep the lights on. That's essential. You got to pay the bills.
That's how you got stuck with the cemetery.
What? Oh, being essential?
Yeah.
No, actually, it's not stuck, but none of the family, and it was a. I will say this, and I wish I'd known them all, but that's another generation. That was my grandmother's generation. But the cemetery was, let's call it a family affair. It just wasn't my grandfather, it was multiple families that were involved with it. And they just didn't have anybody. One of the family members tried to run it for a while, and every time I would see him, he was disgusted and discouraged. It's the best way I can say. And then I thought, well, he's going to go crazy over this thing. I've got a crew, I was managing property, I'll take it over. Well, little did I know, of course that's history, I guess, and that's lack of due diligence, but little did I know the condition that it was in. Then I just got kicked in the teeth. But you know how life is. Sometimes a challenge becomes an opportunity. So I hadn't built that tower up there yet.
You'd have to be you need to hire one of those wild thinkers.
But if you ever see a cross up there, you'll say, well, Joe thought about it. We built some crosses in Chattanooga, so you never know what I'm up to. I might do something.
Maybe you can look around and see what other. It can't be the only one that's had this problem.
Oh, it's all over the place.
I mean, it's all over the world, right?
We had the auditor come in from the state, and we were talking about it, and it's one of those things. The big boys sometimes get into worse trouble than I am. But boy, I tell you, I would suggest I do everything I can. Now, I'm not saying that it's doing well enough to do everything it needs, but we do everything we can.
So you're selling real estate in Chattanooga and running the clothing store.
Now, and run the cemetery company.
How do you divide your day up?
Minute by minute.
Because that's quite a bit, isn't it?
Yeah, I used to have some help, but I'm looking for help. I put up a bulletin board in downtown Cleveland yesterday for about, I think it's up to 12 jobs I have open. I'd like to find some people.
Like 12 jobs, what would they be?
Well, I need a bookkeeper. I need an office manager. I need a store manager. I need a sales assistant. I need an e-commerce manager. I need a painter.
How many rental properties do you manage now?
About 30 doors, I think.
And some vacant land.
Vacant land.
Lots. You got that lot on 4th Street.
Yeah.
That you won't sell, right?
Did you see what I did lately? Put a fence around it.
How come?
Everybody was dumping on me.
Oh, that's on 4th Street. I've helped that one near Deer Park.
Oh, that's 14th Street.
14th, yeah.
Yeah. Hadn't put a fence around that yet. But I did have a lot of the neighbors.
Why don't you just sell it to me?
Well, I think that might be, but the question I think everybody is, maybe I'm trying to envision, is whether the house will be expanded that's on 14th Street, on Harl, or whether the house on Harl will be torn down and a brand new house be built.
Well, the one on Harl,
or whether there should be two houses there.
You own the one on Harl?
Mm-hmm. It's on one lot. I had a very unique grandfather. His name was Hal Moore, and he would get up at 4 a.m. and he would go out and build houses. And he'd manage property, but he had some sidekicks, and they had some lumber yards and whatnot. And he'd go out and do that. And then he went down to the mill. He was a general manager of the woolen mill. His name was Hal Moore. So he built these houses. Mm-hmm. And I guess, or I surmise, back then they didn't care whether you built two houses on the same lot.
So that's just one lot.
That's one lot.
But didn't it have another house on it?
It had an old farmhouse on it. And so he built in probably 30s the house on Harl. I don't know what was on it. Could have been a farm. I don't know what it was. But it's the edge of farm out there at the time. You go up north and I don't know when Deer Park was started, but a lot of that was just open ground up there.
Do you have a set schedule that you follow during the day?
You better believe it.
Like what?
Like every morning, up early.
What time?
Oh, about 6. Get her rolling. Used to get up earlier.
What do you get rolling?
My maintenance guy says, Joe, you got to show up at 7:30.
Where at?
Downtown. I used to show up at 7, but then I went to 8. But then I got people that want to get.
How does he know what maintenance is to do today?
We go down and we have a staff meeting. We surmise what we're going to do for the day.
How do you know where you get calls?
Get calls and I visit and I observe. And I've got a background of inspecting.
But I mean, do people call and leave a message, say, I need this fixed?
Yeah, leave a message.
So you have an office phone?
Or I see it. Oh, yeah. Or I see it. Or I already know it. I mean,
so there's a phone at your...
Yeah, a voicemail.
Which is
and a lot of times they call me. I've left the phone in the car, but a lot of times they'll call me and say, hey, Joe, I got a problem.
So they leave it... You got a phone for the management company.
And I got a phone.
And you got the Hardwick phone. Close.
Then I got a phone.
And then the real estate company.
They can call me, yeah.
So when you get there at 7:30.
It is. It is. I don't use a whiteboard. I used to, but it's a dream meeting. What do we want to do today? I've already got tomorrow mapped out. We're doing a tremendous cleanup office move tomorrow. And I've already planned it and laid it out.
So these maintenance, is it one maintenance guy or two?
We got 2 tomorrow. We'll have 4 come in. They're mover types.
And so they were maintenance people for the property management
Yeah,
division,
2 of them are
if you will?
property management, 2 are pickup. And they'll come in. They're heavy lifters, and they'll come in. We're going to pick up furniture and move it.
To your new place.
Yeah, we're going to do some redown.
How's the business at that new location?
Much better, about 100% better. It's night and day. Even though it's an old space, it's just tremendous.
Wonder why. How long have you been there? Like 2 weeks?
Well, unfortunately, longer. 2 months maybe. But
So how much you said 100% more business?
it's unbelievable.
Well, where you were at before didn't seem like a clothing store place.
No, it was a former furniture store,
Steve Lamb's place.
and it was Steve Lamb's before that.
It was okay for furniture place, right?
Everybody came in there looking for furniture. In fact, they still do. But for better men's clothing, it's not a place.
Do you think since they tore those buildings down, it'll help?
For furniture, I'm thinking about running a used furniture operation down there. Closing out some things.
Used furniture, it's everywhere, isn't it?
Well, I've got it. I pick it up. People leave it.
I do too on apartments.
Yeah, people leave
You're supposed to keep it 30 days.
That's where I leave. Oh my gosh. Now you know my warehouse.
Yeah, that's where I keep it. I keep it for about 30 days, and then usually it's not worth anything. I worry about bed bugs too if something had
I don't touch
used
it.
furniture.
I don't touch it.
Yeah.
I don't touch mattresses, and sometimes it's kind of funny because I'll leave the couches out or I'll leave a sofa out for a while to see if I see anything coming.
How do you know what clothes to put in your place?
The marketplace. What he's wearing, what you're wearing, what people are wearing.
This
What you
doesn't have pockets though.
I
Why
know.
won't they put pockets on these shirts?
There's a designer out there that says golfers don't use pockets. Or there's a designer.
But why does
there's a designer that says too many people have pockets. Let's don't put pockets. There's all kinds of reasons that people use a different design. How many buttons have you got there?
2, 1 here and
How many buttons have you got?
2,
How many buttons do I have?
3? So it's just a little different. But I like these because it's so wide.
No.
This is wide.
Well, that's it.
And it's stiffer.
See?
I like that.
See? And the sleeves are all different.
Yeah, they're a little tighter.
Yeah, so it's all, and the collars, the collars are different. So it's all creative design.
Anybody that would design a shirt without a pockets is dumb. I mean, why not at least put a pocket on it? It must be because it's 1 cent cheaper or something.
The only thing I would say to you is whatever sells is great.
But where do you, when you say that, now do you go to these places and buy stuff?
Yeah, I'll be going to Chicago to buy.
Is that a common thing for you to do, to go to Chicago and buy?
Chicago and Charlotte.
Where do you
Las
stay?
Vegas.
Where do you stay in? I got a friend of mine, Alvin Calhoun. He bought a condo at Trump Plaza. Is that what it's called?
Where, in Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I went there. Trump International, whatever. He did.
Tell him to let you stay there.
Well, I'm staying at the Moxie. Yeah.
Tell him you want a key.
That's interesting that why would Alvin Calhoun go to Chicago?
He loves it.
You like Chicago?
He likes the wind.
Really?
Is it windy there?
Very windy. In the middle of winter, it's something else.
What do you like about it? When you go?
Well, I like Chicago, the show. I'm not saying I like the town much. I enjoy the town. I went to a couple of things. I went up to,
He says the concerts and stuff are all free.
could be, but the Mercantile Mart is 30,000 square feet of wall-to-wall manufacturers or manufacturer reps. And it's unusual to be able to pack in 3,000 vendors in 3 days.
Everybody's selling polo shirts.
No,
Right.
no, it's everything, top to bottom. Everything. Shoes, tops, hats, outerwear, boots.
So when you see these vendors, what do? Say, I own a clothing store in Cleveland, Tennessee.
Oh, they know me coming.
And so they're
You
trying.
register and they check you out. And you go in, and typically you have, over the years, built up a representation or a relationship with them.
Like this type of shirt here, how many will you buy in a year?
Let's see. Before the pandemic, I would buy 50.
But now at your new location after the pandemic,
I've
how many
already-
do you anticipate?
I think probably the open to buy on that will be about 40. I'll be looking for 40 different
They
styles.
bring them all at once?
Oh, heavens no. Schedule them.
40 shirts,
40 styles.
40 styles.
40
I thought
styles.
you meant 40 shirts.
No, 40 styles. I'll be looking at different styles.
How many of each style?
Typically a size, of each, wait a minute, I'll say it differently. 40 different products. There are styles within each product. For instance, that will have 3 styles, and I'll look at them, and then I'll shop against my inventory that I don't have. You just bought that, I'll replace that. And I'll look for one that has a pocket.
Yeah, do that. They're impossible to find.
I'll find it. You just see, that's called service.
Do you know?
It's kind of like the lady that called me from Atlanta, Georgia. Says, I want a hat. I said, what do you want? She says, I want it to be this. I said, fine. We'll put it in the mail to you.
You remember on Gunsmoke, Miss Kitty always used to buy those funny looking hats?
Yeah.
Do you remember the store still selling those hats for women? Or was that?
I haven't seen one lately.
But were you
We had a millinery store downtown. Yeah.
a what store?
Millinery.
What's that mean?
That means it was a hat shop.
Millinery.
Yeah, millinery. I believe it is.
Did they make men's and women's hats?
No, just they had women's hats. That was the old, it's where Haskell is now. Used to have hats and shoes.
Now
Delightful people.
millinery, that's a maker of women's hats.
Or a retailer of women's hats.
And so they'd put what? Flowers and bows and
Oh, put all kinds of things. Little treatments that they had, little webs and, feathers.
when did they stop doing that?
They haven't.
I haven't seen
You
them.
you can go look for them.
Where would they wear them?
Go down and see.
Chicago?
No, they wear them in Chattanooga. They wear them in a lot of churches. We don't see them in churches in Cleveland, but in Chattanooga they still wear them to some churches. We had a lady in our church, Peggy Johnson,
Where do you go to church?
Broad Street, United Methodist. But Peggy Johnson wore a hat every week. Mm-hmm. You don't see it.
I don't see it. They don't wear hats at my church.
Yeah, yeah. But back then, that's part of the accoutrement. You'd see a hat.
Accoutrement.
Yeah.
What's that?
Covering. Yeah.
Accoutrement. I'm wearing an accoutrement.
Yeah.
It's not a hat. Now, Eddie Cartwright, he owned a clothing store.
He sure did.
Was that?
I don't know if he owned it, but he worked.
Was that was different than yours, right?
Yeah, I believe it was Davis.
Now,
It was in the Village Mall. Is that a fact?
I believe it is. Now, some people called it a haberdasher.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So a haberdasher
Is a fellow that is actually a proprietor of a men's store.
That's a strange name.
Well, our president was a haberdasher.
He was a haberdasher.
Yeah, not this president, but who was it? He was a Democrat. Can you think
I
of?
can't remember who it was.
No, you'll think about it. Who came after Franklin Roosevelt?
I don't much remember.
He was from Missouri.
Can't think of who it was. After Roosevelt?
Yeah, Franklin.
I'm lost.
Oh, you remember? He dropped the bomb on Tokyo.
Truman?
Yeah, wasn't it?
The buck stops here?
Yeah. He was a haberdasher. He dropped it on Tokyo. What? Yes, I think he bombed Tokyo, but he dropped it on Japan. The bombs.
From the Manhattan Project.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And interesting enough, I just saw a documentary. He wasn't in the know. Franklin Roosevelt did not include him with a lot of the discussions of the Manhattan Project. And so,
Was it Roosevelt that was going like this when the bomb went off?
where? No, he wasn't living.
No, that was the Panama Canal.
Yeah, I don't know.
Which one?
My dad was stationed in Panama Canal. That's interesting.
How long was he in the military?
2+. I think he was probably 2+. He was a reservist for a while, Navy reservist.
When you moved back to Cleveland, when did you say, okay, I'm moving back to Cleveland? When you bought the...
No. I moved to Cleveland. Well, I worked here. I'd interned.
Yeah.
And I had 3 roads, if you want to call it. I had a road into banking, and I almost took that road. Mm-hmm. And that would have been staying in Atlanta and working for one of the large companies down, banking institutions down
If you
there.
had, I'd been a lot nicer to you.
Well, it could be. The second road was to work in Chattanooga and probably working in a banking institution. I had taken credit and collections and finance and marketing. I might have done that route. Or the third route, interesting enough, is to come up here. And it was so coincidental that this opened and at the right time. And it was an adventure. That's the best way I can say.
When you first started it?
When I came up here, it was an adventure. I had no I wasn't on the board, so I had no understanding or privy to what they were up to or what their plans were or what their circumstances might be. And when I got here, it's kind of like they said, guess what? We're throwing the sink at you. And I thought, oh boy, this is great. And here we go. And it was a fun road. To think what we did.
Yeah, it was really something.
No, it was.
How many employees were there
When I left, it was 750. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was a road. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was great. It was just, we were purring.
But now that you're in the clothing business, do you like that better, or managing property, or selling real estate?
Well, that's people ask me what I like the best. I think serving people. I enjoy serving people. I love serving customers. I've always done that.
What do you identify as mostly? With 30 pieces of real estate, you wouldn't even have to work, would you?
Do what?
If you had 30 pieces of real estate.
No, every day.
But you wouldn't have to.
Every day. Every day.
If you had 30 pieces of property at $500 apiece.
No, they're not. They're not all. They're not. Let me see how I can say this without offending. They're not all 2020 models. My oldest model is an 1854 model.
Well, still yet.
Yeah, it needs tender loving care every day.
Old rentals do that, don't they?
Yeah, but it's tender loving care. And then you have, and I'm not trying to tell you this is not fun, but then you have mental breakdowns, and you have people that don't pay rent, and you have people that leave a junked up apartment. You have to fix it. And then you got people that break down your windows and break in, and you got people that have dogs that bark, and you have people that...
You got the city saying your tenant's not mowing the yard.
Yeah, and you got grass, and then you got neighbors that throw all their trash on your property. I mean, it's that's what I was talking to you about 4th Street. I had a lot over there, and I thought, well, how are we going to solve this? We had people that would actually physically take everything out of an apartment and put it right in front of the apartment building, my apartment building. I thought, that didn't look good. That's trashy. So I said, well, let's put a border around this area, and let's plant some flowers. Let's do something so they just don't come in and dump right in that area. And we tried that, but then they went across the street, that vacant corner there, and they started doing that. So I went over there the other day, about 2 weeks ago, and I said, good grief. They had put everything, and everybody went through everything, and there was stuff all over the place. I said, okay, finalize. We're going to put a fence around that house, that property, and we'll put a no trespassing sign on it, and we'll see if we can keep people from trashing us up. Well, since then it's worked.
What's your hobby?
I tell you what, though, the funniest thing is, so all the neighbors, all the homeless people came over and said, what you doing? He says, we're fencing this off. They said, why? He said, we're going to put a Dollar General here. So, you know, sometimes you have to get the talk going.
I guess. Boy, the homeless people, they would walk, I guess they would walk from the summit right past your place to that Salvation Army.
Every day.
Did you ever go in the Salvation Army and get coffee?
I used to go in and try to support them, but I haven't been lately. I couldn't get their hours right. I go down the street.
What's that coffee shop for?
Well, it was for, you know, I'm not trying to say community, but association, or I don't think it was much for income production, but it was a service that they were rendering. I don't think the homeless were so much using it, but it was an outlet.
Is the coffee free?
Oh, it's a shop. It's a coffee shop.
I went there one time and got a cup, and it wasn't very good coffee.
It wasn't. I drink Army coffee, so it doesn't matter.
Where'd you get your Army coffee?
Down at the sanitary food liner.
Is it called Army coffee?
Well, it's black.
What is it called? Just
I don't know. It's out of the pot.
oh, you don't get. You're not talking about. You don't have it at your house.
No, I don't. I go down there. I need to stop doing that. I'm giving away $1.10 every morning, so I need to start doing something different.
That's Nicky and Jack's.
No, it's down there where Teresa used to have it.
Yeah, it's Nicky and Jack
Yeah.
Patel. They're really nice people.
Yeah. Don't ever try to reserve a truck with one of them.
I haven't ever tried that.
Only talk to April.
Oh. Well,
They're Teresa's buddies.
Yeah, she really likes them. What about what's your hobby?
Oh, history.
History
Research.
of what?
Biography. People. Leadership. History of events. Used to do historic preservation. I'm currently the president of the Chattanooga Historical Association.
How many is involved in that?
Oh, we got about 150, 170 people.
You've got more ties to Chattanooga than people would realize.
I'm very well linked. I grew up down there on the streets.
Do you consider that home or Cleveland?
Interesting enough, I have 2 homes. Used to have 3.
So you live...
I used to have 3. I used to have, 3 homes. I have a home wherever I am. I used to have a home in Nashville.
Do you have one in Chattanooga now?
No. I mean, a home in the sense, I'm home based there. I go down, I've got an activity there that causes me to do operations.
But you live...
I live physically here, but I have spent the night in Nashville a lot. Used to, at one juncture in my life, I spent a lot of nights in Birmingham. And that's, those were Army ventures. That's when I was in the
What
Army
do you do
Reserve.
of the evening?
Chill,
Watch TV?
read, chill.
No TV?
Do Oh yeah. I watch some news and then that's about it. But I chill.
What time you get home at the end of the day?
8 o'clock.
What are you doing until 8?
You guessed it.
You say it's planned out, regimented.
Yeah, I'm somewhere.
Where are you usually at 4?
I'm somewhere.
Where
I'm
are you
either
at?
on the road from Chattanooga. I'm in Chattanooga.
Say
You just don't know where I am. I'm in a meeting somewhere. I'm in Toastmasters or something, doing something with them.
It's not. So you're stayed real busy.
I'm a hustler. I don't say that.
You
negative.
cook at home yourself?
Yeah, I've done that.
Well, is that what you usually eat when you get home at 8?
I have a way to do that. Cook up something.
What do you cook?
Anything I can find. I think it's spaghetti tonight.
You cook it yourself?
Yeah,
You
I work it up.
you're not married?
Still single.
You need a.
I need a cook. I tell you what, I tell you what, I've got a bulletin board downtown, and I've listed 12 jobs, and I think I've got to put down there the bookkeeper. I think I'm gonna put down there a cook.
A wife?
No, I think I'll put down a wife, but then I'll put down a cook.
Why don't
and
you
a
get on
helper.
one of these dating sites?
Oh, listen. Huh?
Yeah. I mean, why not?
No, I've tried some things like that.
Didn't work.
They've
got them perfected now, I think.
Yeah. I went
Well,
on.
what would you
I
put?
went on a date once.
Just don't put your name.
Good golly.
Maybe that's what's wrong.
I went on a date once, and I thought, she's from Minneapolis, and she's a school teacher and whatnot. And she comes down, and we went out, and then she somehow brought her friend by. I don't know. I don't think I went to Minneapolis, but I went somewhere and I met her. And I thought, this is interesting. And then the more I got into it, the more I said, my goodness, what a background. I said, I'm glad this didn't go work out.
She have baggage?
She had an interesting background. I won't say baggage, but there's a lot to be said about not only dating sites, but what do they call it? Lookups, personal lookups.
Yeah.
Be verified or whatever.
Yeah, e-verify and stuff. Some are right and some are wrong.
Well, it doesn't matter. Some of them will give you some, and you go Google some people and you find out some things. I thought, my goodness, woo.
What kind of stuff do you read at night?
I pick up books all the time from the library. I'll pick up some things from finance. I'll pick up some things on biography. Pick up things on literature.
What do you mean biography? A biography of certain people?
Yeah, people.
Like who?
I pick up this guy, Schwartzman, that runs the large investment company up in New York. I'll read his biography, and now I'll read military biography. I'll also, I'm a military historian, so I like that. And then I'll go in and I'll pick up some information about national security matters. I'll get into that. I love intelligence. My dad was an intelligence officer, and I'm kind of in the same bit. So.
Is it just for fun? There's no end result you're looking for?
Yeah. Knowledge. Be smarter.
That's the only.
Get your brain. Your brain's a muscle, and I'm guilty of not exercising, and my exercise is my brain. That's where I get all my.
So you'll read how much a night?
Sometimes I'll read 2 books a week. Go through 2.
Like that thick of books?
Yeah, just whip them.
Like 2 hours a night you'll read?
Yeah, so I'll whip them. I got 5 I got to read right now.
You turn the TV off while you're reading?
Yeah.
Just turn on music?
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, you turn on some music while you're reading?
Yeah.
What kind of music?
At night it's always peaceful. Anything peaceful.
I
listen to WDEF a lot.
You listen to Baroque any?
No, I don't listen to classical. Used to try to get into classical, but I don't. I used to like some blues, but I don't have a good station.
If I'm just wanting to think, I don't want to listen to anything with somebody singing. It distracts me.
Well, I'm an old. See, I was did all my upbringing in the soul years, so I basically go back to all the soul music in the '60s and early '70s. So,
What like what?
well, if you go back to the Temptations and the Four Tops, and then
Percy Sledge.
Percy Sledge, and we were fortunate at Vanderbilt. We had a lot of people that came down to the Pike House of Booker T and the MGs. And
You're talking about stuff prior to Elvis.
no, about the same time, but Elvis was on a different path. This was mostly in.
He was one of those forward thinkers that we're talking
Well,
about.
it could have been, but this was mostly soul music. But Wilson Pickett and some of the others that I came along with, so to speak.
So you may listen to that at night while you're.
Yeah, it chills me.
You have a.
Brings back. It's kind of interesting. I have a way in. It's kind of. I went to a Four Tops concert in Chattanooga once. Took a lovely lady out to it. And came back and I forgot where I was on the highway. Till the policeman stopped me. Said, "What are you listening to?" I said, "The Four Tops." He says, "You're going too fast."
Was it a fast song?
Yeah, but I was just singing along, just having a good time.
Did they give you a ticket?
I think he might have, but I think I tried to talk him out of it. Told him I was in a different zone. Just came from a Four Tops concert.
I got a ticket in Chattanooga here a couple of months ago, and he said, "Why are you going so fast?" And I said, I said, "Oh, I'm from out of town." And he said, "So just an old country boy in a big city?" And I said, "Yeah, I guess that's it." And he said, "Well, I'm not going to give you a ticket." And I said, "I appreciate it." He thought I was from the mountains of Cleveland, I guess.
Yeah. No, I was. I normally don't get tickets because I've got old pickup trucks that don't go very fast. So, but at any rate,
I get a lot.
I know, but that night I was zoned out with the Four Tops.
So at night, after you've eaten food that you cooked yourself,
I will say I listen to a lot of Christian music too. I should have left that out.
while you're eating.
Yeah. So I'll have that on. So I have, different likes and different.
What's it like going home and cooking for yourself?
Easy.
You ever eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches?
Had one last night.
I'm thinking about having one tonight.
Had one last night.
You eat potato chips
I
with
got home yesterday after working, and I said to myself, I had such a large sandwich. I went down here to Jimmy John's and had a big old sandwich and some barbecue chips and one of these big old cookies. And I got home last night and I said, I just don't want to eat anything. So I got a bowl of oatmeal and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And
grape jelly?
no, I didn't have any jelly, but peanut butter and strawberry jelly. So I was able to.
No potato chips with it?
Potato chips, they're not my friends anymore. I eat them all the time. I eat at Gardner's. But I eat them all the time, but they're not my friends anymore. I think I got too much fat in them.
I get to where I can't eat them like I used to.
Well, I eat them because it's a package deal.
I'm already
ever buy
eating.
a package deal?
Oh,
you
yeah.
buy a sandwich, you buy chips, and I have a Hershey bar and a pickle and a glass of iced tea, and that's it.
Hershey bar.
Yeah.
From Gardner's?
Yeah. You heard about Hershey's, haven't you? Oh, that chocolate's good for you.
Is Gardner's back open?
Yeah, doing the carry out or pass through the window.
You don't let you in any still?
Oh, they don't let me in. I've asked them to.
Will they?
Lassiter's are open. They can go in Lassiter's.
Well, every other restaurant's open.
I know.
Why would they be closed?
I'm not sure. I know it's upkeep, and it is COVID. You have COVID, and I don't want to sound negative, but COVID is still present in the world, and there's precaution you have to take, and but I haven't been in there to see if they've restocked it. Now they may have had such a tremendous loss that they haven't gone in there and restocked it. So they've just got, which means it's economical. They're just selling sandwiches and things right off of but they don't have all the, products on the walls.
But I liked going in there because of the atmosphere.
I love it. I've been going in there since.
I put their window in, that pass-through window.
Good for you.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good deal.
Yeah.
But I mean, I like them. I've always liked them, and they're my friends, and I try to, support them.
They have a lot of neat stuff to buy. They always have the Three Stooges playing too.
Yeah, I know. Well, that's why I'd go in there, and that helped me. I could associate. I said, he's on my maintenance team today.
Does your church have Sunday night church or just Sunday morning?
No, it doesn't have Sunday night. It's got 2 services in the morning.
You sit in the same place every week?
I moved. I moved from the back road to the side road. And I kind of like it there, but I think I'll move again.
Is everybody back to normal there?
We had a good turnout today.
How many?
I guess we had 70, 75.
That's not that many. What was it before COVID?
Oh, we were full.
How many?
Had 2 services.
How many will it hold?
I'd say 200. Don't quote me on that.
So 200.
225.
2 services of 200.
I mean, that's the capabilities.
They have Sunday school in between.
Yeah, we have Sunday school now.
You go to Sunday school?
Yeah, 8:30, 9:30.
Who teaches it?
We've got 2 teachers in our group. We're in the Varnell Day class. Remember Robert?
Yeah.
Robert Varnell.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob. He started it. Mm-hmm. He used to be my attorney. And Connie Day, you remember Connie Day? Used to work with Ben Lungley.
I remember her.
She was kind of the follow-through.
What did Bob die of?
Agent Orange, I believe.
He was young, wasn't he?
Uh-huh. He was my dorm, what do we call it? Dorm manager at Vanderbilt. He went to Vanderbilt Law.
Was he originally from Cleveland? He was from Cleveland, wasn't he?
Yeah. His dad was the farmer.
Did you know him when
Yeah.
you went to Vanderbilt already?
I knew the family.
But you didn't know him?
Not him personally, but I knew them.
Did you hang around him there at Vanderbilt?
He was no, I didn't, because we associated, but not well, because he would study and I would study. It wasn't easy for me at Vanderbilt. I had to work.
What do you think?
But I played hard too, so I had
Did
to
you
work.
get in any trouble at all?
At Vanderbilt, interesting, no. I didn't get in any trouble, but I saw the world.
At Vanderbilt?
Yeah, ever since Vanderbilt, I've been on an adventure. It's called absorption.
If you had it,
I absorbed anything and everything, both on the campus and off campus.
if you had to do it all over again, what would you have focused on?
Focused on. Boy, that's a good one. What would I have focused on? I don't think I would have changed anything. I probably focused on. I probably would not have focused on so much. I would have restricted my focus. If to think back, I would have been less likely to have gotten involved with so many different things.
What do you think caused that?
I called genes.
You think
My dad was just like me.
You think you get bored, or?
It is, one thing is, it's a little bit of, we're adventuresome, we're pioneers. We would get involved with different things. We built businesses. My dad was that way. I've become that way.
Do you get bored? Do you get bored with what you were doing, or you still want to do it all?
No, opportunities end up in your lap. That's the best way I can say.
You know, you can have so many opportunities that it can
put
you out of business.
Oh, it'll bog you down. I mean, I know. I've been there. I've had some cases where, you know, deep down. But then, for some reason, and I did a project in Chattanooga, and it took me 20 years to pull it off, but then I pulled it off. So, I mean, there's a 20-year lifespan on a project.
What would you focus it down to 2 areas in your life that you would narrow it down if you had it to do it over again?
I think I would have married her. I think I would have...
Married who?
I'm not going to tell you, but I think I'd married her. And I think probably...
Would she have married you?
Yeah, probably. I don't know if we'd stay together, but we'd married. But then the next thing is, I think I might have, I'm not saying I would have, but I think I might have I might have moved into a smaller house. Might have lived in a smaller house.
Than you live in now?
Yeah.
How big is that house?
About 3,000 square feet.
Golly, I bet you live in 20 square feet.
Oh, God. I don't know if it's 3,000. It's 2,500, I guess. It's 2 stories.
Where did you meet her at?
Grew up with her.
Did she marry?
Then divorced.
She's still alive?
Think so. I think she's in Nashville.
What'd you call her?
Well, I did.
What'd she say?
Well, she's in a different world. Life's changed. So that's
People change, don't you? You can't go home again, can you?
Oh, yeah. I love it.
I mean, back to the way things
I love
were.
it. I love it. Called another old girlfriend who's divorced and talked to her. We used to have debates about politics. And, you know, she's just, life changes. She's divorced now. And times change.
Do people change, you think, too?
Circumstances may change their perspective. I think so. I think they have a little less restrictions as a kid. They're, you know, unlimited ambition, unlimited opportunity. And then all of a sudden, here comes husband, here comes children, here comes career, here comes whatever. Here comes lack of income, here comes divorce, here comes, you know, depression. A lot of things that kick in. And then all of a sudden, then they're left with what they got. So,
Do you think our perspective is how we see things, right?
Sure.
So do you think that shapes our personalities, what we become?
I think your perspective, but I think it's what your foundations, on what you're founded on. And I think that's your somewhat, I call it code of conduct. Sometimes it's your outlook on life, things that have been introduced to you by your parents, your mottos,
You think that shapes
your education.
the basis?
It's unbelievable if you go back and sometimes, by the way, I'm going to work on a memoir, but the question is, you go back to those fundamental engagements that we have as children, all through life, all through those formative years, and how those people have planted those seeds or planted that information or planted that outlook. And if you have picked up on them and if you've just made them a part of your life, then, you know, it carries forward.
You can't escape it, can you?
You don't want to.
I don't know if you
it's
can.
positive. If it's positive.
If it's negative?
If it's negative, sometimes it's catharsis.
What's that mean?
I watched a documentary.
What's catharsis?
That's discharge. You need to discharge it. Sometimes in fact, I watched a documentary. I'm very interested in mind and thinking and how one processes and how one stores up negative thoughts or negative vibrations. And if they get into your psyche and they bog you down and make you restrictive, then basically you're not able to go forward in an appropriate, very positive outlook. This program that I looked at interesting enough, and it was mind healing. But sometimes people, they don't let their mind heal, and they just let all this thing stay within them. It could be a divorce, it could have been a breakup, getting fired, family discouragement, whatever else that you come along, wrecks or whatever. And sometimes you just get bogged down with them. But if you can kind of let that just, as they say, let that water just flow. Just go on to the next. Just go on to the next.
But it's already shaped your perception.
Well, your perception, you may allow it to, but sometimes you just don't. It's a barrier that you can put up and say that's not going to affect me.
But then people would say, "Oh, you're not being a realist."
Well, it's not being a realist. It's not being reactive to those negative vibrations. In other words, if it's kind of like a lot of people that file a lawsuit against you, well, they file it and you win or you lose. And if you lose, do you continue to throw stones at the person that filed it? Or do you say, okay, well, that's over. I go on to the next. I use the word next. I love to use the word next. I've been in real estate long enough to getting fired. And being fired in a real estate deal is you have a listing and they don't renew it, or the buyer that comes along decides, you're representing a buyer, decides he can't finance it or he can't close, and then you just have to say next. You go on to the next. You don't keep it pinned up. You don't let that.
So keeping that stuff pinned up can skew your perception.
Oh, it skews
your perspective.
Yeah, and it and I hate to say it, and it damages. It damages your perspective. It makes you not responsive to the next event.
But if you're being a realist, then what does it matter what your perspective is? Or does your perspective, that's why I say the person that says, oh, I'm a realist doesn't exist.
Well, realist, we all got to deal with reality, but at the same time, you've got to be able to say, how am I going to respond positively to these series of events?
But my real could be different than yours.
Oh, everybody's got a different.
So there's no such thing as a realist.
Well, it could be your reality and my reality.
So which one's real?
Well, it is to me. It is to you.
So when somebody says, I'm a realist, realist doesn't exist.
Well, it does in your way.
Only in your way.
In your way. Now,
I mean,
I've got a case right now. I've got a big mental argument going on in politics. There are people that are saying, why don't you? Why don't you? Why don't you? I thought, well, I think I studied this long enough. I think I interpreted this long enough to have made this decision about this individual or about this issue or whatever. And once I've made that decision, I mean, people could come back to you and try to skew you and try to say, well, that circumstance. I said, well, it's not what I interpret. It's my interpretation of events, my interpretation of character, my interpretation of his mindset or his or her mindset, and I just don't want to go in that direction. So I'm not going to support that type. And I think we all get into them. Even though we have in the past. I may have supported a candidate in the past, and then I've gotten to know that candidate better and say, hey, I shouldn't have. You know what I mean? And I think that's one of the things that we do. I got involved, interestingly enough, when I was in the military. It's not a secret, but I got involved with a lot of foreign dignitaries, some of which went on to great things, some of which got, I hate to say soured or got painted. And sometimes those that have gotten soured and painted, not necessarily by themselves, but by those that had influenced them, and they took them down. They got taken down not by their instincts, but by somebody on their staff or on their team took them down.
Our perceptions, are they always getting skewed by events?
Influenced, I don't know to say skewed, but our perceptions are always influenced.
But what is...
If we're open to it, if our radar is on. If our radar is not on, then sometimes it doesn't. There's no interpretation.
Which is more powerful, those influences that we were raised with or the influences that happen later on?
I'd say both. I'd say you don't stop being open to influences. I think you can get robbed of great opportunities when you get fixated on something that either occurred then or was a presentation then or an influence then. I think it's a continuum. If I hadn't have run into a Marine, I would not have, combat Marine, I would not have been able to interpret things in the war that I would have as a child. So that influence made me a better person because I didn't know it. My brain was not cognizant or I wasn't aware of. And that's the thing about the Medal of Honor Museum in Chattanooga. That influence opens up people that have never thought or never been influenced by the people that have been warriors in the past. Okay? Over these years. Some people know of them, but some others that don't.
So it's good to stay open-minded about new things, obviously, right?
Exactly. In fact, growing up, I mean, there was and we have to kind of go back in generations, but growing up, there was only one color, and that was gray. There wasn't any blue. People that had a blue color were from the north. We didn't associate with anybody with a blue color. And interestingly enough, what's happened over time is what you go to a college or you go to a high school that has people from a different walk, and then certainly you get into the Army, and then a different walk, a different background, and then certainly into politics, national, and then you get into other things, and this whole world becomes a larger opportunity to understand what people are doing, and what their outlooks are, and what their drivers are, what they really want to achieve.
And maybe the only way that we can really get some understanding is by reading some of these biographies. And
we read, well, but just not only biographies, but news and editorials.
Now, if we watch
if I have a big regret, I thought about this the other day. This pandemic has really hurt me. You know why?
Why?
My newspaper source has dried up. The library no longer subscribes to newspapers because of the pandemic. So you don't have access to regional newspapers to read, to try to absorb different points of view, et cetera, et cetera. Because of that, in fact, they had the New York Times, they still try to have the Wall Street, but Nashville, Knoxville, Atlanta, it gives you a perspective. I'll never forget, now this is dating myself, but as a child, every Sunday morning, my task was to get out of the car after church, take $1.50 to $2.50, and go over to the paper stand. The little man had a paper stand in Chattanooga, and pick up 5 newspapers and carry those newspapers back into the car and take those newspapers to the house. And Dad would sit there on Sunday afternoon and absorb that news from that perspective. And that's how he gained an understanding of what was going on. Not only, back then TV wasn't present, so that's where he got a perspective. And I think that's one of the things that we can do today, is to gain a different perspective of different outlets. Sometimes I watch people and I say, you only look at that station? You only listen to that person? And I think to myself, how in the world can you do that?
And they're feeding us
How
what
can you?
and it's not news anymore. It's just a show about.
I know. How can you get one side of every circumstance? How do you get one side of every circumstance? Fortunately, that gives you a little background that I had. When I was in the military, I had one job which was kind of a little intelligence job. I won't say too much about it. But one of the things it was, we were to listen to as many people as we could find. That was the job. It was intelligence kind of a job. But we were listeners. We would talk to as many people as we could find. And they would tell you. They'll tell you what's going on. When I came up here to the mill, we had and Frank Hardwick was so instrumental in this. He had a group, and it was called Company Understanding or something. I forget what he called it. But the whole concept is you would sit around in a circle and talk about things. Improvement. It was Company Improvement Program. And the whole concept was to sit around and talk about what in the world is going on. For with the concept is, look for ways of making an improvement. And that helped, and that information from that scribe, if you would, was presented to the board of directors, and that information was sometimes acted on, etc. But the idea is not from a supervisor, and not from a department manager, and not from a staff person. It was from everybody. Everybody shared in that understanding. And when you think about that, if you take that same philosophy into a church or into a social group or into a fraternity or into any type of organization, builders organizations, if you can bring and synthesize all that information unfiltered into that organization and then understand it and act on it, you've got something to think about.
The collective thought of the group is greater. Thought.
That's right. And that's how you can take and make those improvements to that organization. A man that thinks he knows it all, in fact, sometimes, I'm kind of guilty of this because of my background. I guess that gets me into trouble, but because I've nailed that roof, I think I know how that roof has been nailed, but sometimes my improvement isn't what it needs to be. I need people like you. And of course, finding people that want to come out and re-nail a roof, sometimes it's hard to find, but that's the attempt. Find better people. I saw the slate people down here at Philhara, and I'm trying to build a relationship with them because they are building a house with slate, and I got a slate job. So I'm going to talk to them and how they're perfecting that slate rehab.
So you think the collective thought of a group is better than my thought or your thought?
It's superior. If you have a background, if it's not garbage in and garbage out, if you got a background or association with the topic. If you have never touched the topic or never thought about it, then yes, you might get what you call negative feedback, and it's not positive. But if they've thought out what they are what the issue is or what the improvement needs to be made, typically things will come about. I ran into a case long ago where it was brought to my attention that things were going awry, and we were able to fix it. Now it took some work, but you're able to fix it. Sometimes people are not being treated properly. You're able to fix it.
When will the library start getting banners again? I mean, how could that affect COVID?
I saw Andy Hunt about that. Of course, he was a librarian down there, and his explanation was it's funding. Funding has been curtailed. And I said, well, are you buying new books? Are you bringing in new books? And I haven't responded. I mean, we're talking about intelligence. But my next response, and I hadn't pursued this yet, but I can see it happening. My next response is, when are people going to be allowed to sit in the second floor study room and read magazines? Because what's the problem is that they're not allowing people to sit there and read the periodicals. So they're not allowing them to sit there and read the periodicals, therefore they're not ordering the periodicals. And so I said to myself, the chicken and the egg situation, nobody's going to come up there and try to read something if they can't sit there and read it.
That's right.
So
I made the mistake of taking my phone to the second floor. Well, they had a guard up there that just was waiting on me.
I used to get up there, and those little ladies got so upset.
And there's a room in the back that there's certain rooms you almost need a rule book before you walk in, because there's some rooms you can't even walk in.
No, I used to, she'd come up there, she'd get some, and I'd run down the hall, and I'd run in the restroom, and
I went in there one day, and a guy was taking a shower in the sink.
Yeah, I know. No, they're homeless. Now, see, that's a case, and I'm not trying to say collective wisdom, but that's a case where the staff, lost control of the facility.
Yeah. They're catching me with my phone in my pocket.
They lost control of the facility. It says, "Thou shalt not sleep in the study room." All the homeless were coming in there and sleeping on Sunday afternoon. So, I mean, it's...
Are they laying on the couches and stuff?
No, they're sleeping in the chairs. They were. They're not doing that now because they're not allowing them. But, that's a staffing issue. That's just pure and simple saying, hey, we love you, but this is not the purpose of the library. We're not a shelter here. And I feel sorry for them. Now, if you really want to get into my crawl, is finding, and I almost had it, and I lost it because I didn't find the money, but find a facility that is large enough, even though it's not necessarily the best, but large enough to house, if not provide, for the homeless. And I had the facility. It was the old Hardwick plating company, and I couldn't find the money, so I think Conley bought it. But the question is, find a large facility, and then these people can sit there and have chairs and let them just sit there. But to have a shower and whatnot. We've got this little homeless facility over here on Wildwood, and then you had the Summit.
Then you got the city down there behind Panera Bread. There's a city down there.
Panera Bread?
Yeah.
You mean down there behind the off of 25th?
Yeah, there's a whole city of them. They got tents and everything.
Well, they were tenting me up at the cemetery until I told you about my little grave, my little patrolman Ryan, didn't I?
Yeah.
So I sicked them on her because they were going up there. They were trying. She said, "Well, I wondered where they were. I knew they were around here." I said, "Well, that's where they are. Let's run them out. Let's ban them out." But that doesn't solve the problem. The problem is they exist. The conditions exist, and
are there more than there used to be, or are we just getting to be a bigger city? I mean, you don't go to Etowah and see that, do you?
No, it's because of the social structure, maybe the support structure, maybe
we're enabling them.
No, we're enabling. We have an enabling system, but the question is, maybe it's called tolerance too. We're tolerating, and the question is, and that's our hearts. Maybe our hearts get away, and we try to be missionaries to these people, but at the same time, it's not creating a workable solution, and we got to go for it. I was in Chattanooga when we were trying to build a homeless city, not city, a village, and it never came about. The mayor was trying to do it down there next to the community kitchen, and it was a good concept. I mean, it was going, but the neighbors were all moving in. The newly rich were coming into that area and building homes and building, little apartment lofts and whatnot, and they said, we don't want this in our neighborhood. So they canceled that project. But there was a concept to build, but I don't know what's happening on Smith Drive. That's evidently that complex is done pretty well. But the same thing, people were offended with that going down on Smith Drive for that new complex.
We're either going to have to make it to where they can exist, leave them on the street, or provide a place for them, one or the other?
Well, I suggest finding the place, but I don't. Again, I lost my. But there may be a facility that will come along one day that say, hey, this will work, and you have showers and you have a meeting room, et cetera, et cetera. I love in fact, I was enamored with it because I had recreation down there and I had the community place and I had some, I kind of thought it through, but it didn't work out. So the next question is where we can find a plant or something, a facility of certain nature that this could work in. I don't know where it is, but
I can see your wheels turning.
Well, it's going to work. It's I didn't win the lottery last night, but if I win the lottery, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
One guy in Britain said, "Joe, I'm going to send you some money." I said, "Send it over." I hadn't seen it.
I needed it yesterday, right?
Says I got an investor. I said, "Oh, send it over."
Joe, I appreciate you coming.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
This has been one great conversation.
Okay. Enjoyed seeing you.
Come
Enjoyed
see
the
us.
conversation.